Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Big Igloo Podcast.
What up, what up?
Theology Thursdays.
The infamous.
That's right. Smart
soon
theology.
to be infamous.
And soon to be infamous. Yeah. Smart theology with dumb dad jokes. So,
And Kris will be providing the dumb dad jokes.
Every dumb dad joke, all right? And hopefully a little bit of smart theology, but that's why I got Jon here too. So anyway, hey, Jon, we kicked this off, and we're calling this, what we're in right now, the best sermon ever.
Yes, sir.
And what was just kind of recapping? We talked about the Beatitudes last week. You know, I know I'm totally putting you on the spot. And by the way, if you're tuning in with us, we want this to be kind of organic and kind of a conversation. I bring some content here, but really Jon's kind of representing the listener. All right, so he's got you. So if he doesn't ask your questions, let him have it.
Yeah.
All right.
And then Kris.
That's right. And so anyway, what was your takeaway on the Sermon on the Mount?
You know, something I've never, when I've read, because I've read that scripture in the past, and something that's never occurred to me is the progression that unfolds during it. I've always read the Beatitudes as separate entities and kind of try to piece it together like what? But just reading it as like a full progression from start to finish, and it just relates to life, the roller coaster of life, how, you know, things start out low sometimes and then it gets high, shoots back down low towards the end, and
that's right.
You land scared and afraid.
And hey, if you're tuning in and listening, that's not thunder. Jon just keeps hitting the tables. This is all new to us. So.
Yes. I like to talk with my hands, and now you put a table in front of me.
That's right. So yeah, we just can't pound the table. So yeah, don't worry. That's not thunder. Rolling in, which by the way, kind of brings me up to something. You know, I know like if you're watching this, it's not like super impressive. This nice background here, this brick wall, and if you know, of course, those of you Grace people, you know that. What our church is like, and you might be wondering, where in the world is that wall? And we shall never tell.
Nope.
We shall never tell.
It's a secret.
That's right.
Mystery.
So anyway, I forgot to set my timer here, so pardon me. But it did make me think of this, though. Jon, have you ever been to NTV Studios?
I did. So fun fact.
Yeah.
I used to do movie reviews for MTV or NTV.
MTV. Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
No, I used to, when I worked at the theater when I was a manager there, I would go and tell them about the movies I would watch and recommend or not recommend. And fun fact about it, I very rarely ever watched the movies. I just read the descriptions because I couldn't I can't watch all those movies in one night. Wow. So I would go there and be like, yeah, it's an action movie. It's got this person in it. It got that person. It's PG-13, you know.
That says so much about our current media practices.
No, absolutely. It's like all those movies dropped at midnight. 4 movies, and they would expect me to watch it all, which obviously my boss didn't expect me, but that's I
didn't know you did that. Well, you can verify that this is true. I've been not only to NTV a few times, but other kind of local affiliate, broadcasting places. What the camera sees looks amazing.
Yeah.
What's off camera looks like a pit, right?
Yeah, just things everywhere.
Like NTV, like first time I walked in there, it's a bit like striking. You're like, wow, this place is a dump, it's bad. And so hopefully if you're watching us online, like this background looks nice and all this, but there are cables everywhere. There's piles of books and stuff like that. So, we're trying to just keep it real for the camera here. So, well, here's the deal. Yeah. Best sermon ever. Let's get to the content here, Jon. And, as we progress through this, of course, so now in the Gospel of Matthew, this, Jesus is setting this up like towards the beginning. He's talking about, he's started his public ministry, and here's this thing. We're supposed to like look at this sermon, and we're supposed to kind of like we said last week, like when you look at that progression of the Beatitudes, and if you've not caught that episode, go back and listen or watch that episode, and we just kind of unpack some of these things. But what I want to do is I want to point out how Jesus is taking us somewhere, and we're supposed to read that sermon and then kind of filter everything that Jesus is about to do through the rest of Matthew through that sermon.
Right.
And see him as kind of the manifestation of that. And ultimately, that's what he's calling us to as his followers. This morning at our men's group, Riley Ross pointed out this thing, and I think this will kind of just set us up for our discussion today. And that is, Riley said this. He goes, have you ever like noticed, when you go to like a shopping center like Target or Walmart or something like that, like does it just bother you when someone doesn't put the shopping cart away?
Yes. Or they leave it in their parking spot?
Yeah. Have you ever seen somebody do that?
Yes.
Like there are few things that I just want to call people out for. Which I got to admit, we used to do lunch run back in the day,
Yes.
right? John, if you don't know, John was a former student of mine when I was youth pastor, and I went to the McDonald's North here in town, and I went to the bathroom, and doing my business there, and an employee walks in, and employee comes in, stands beside me, okay, and then leaves, and I watch him walk right past the sink and go to head out. And I said, hey man, that's not cool. like you need to wash your hands. And he looks at me and he's like all shocked and he's like, there's a sink right out here. And I realized there's an employee washing sink. But I mean, like for that split second, I'm like, oh no, you did not just do that. But then I felt like an idiot for calling him out, right? But
what did you say? Did you say I'm sorry?
I just said, oh, sorry, man.
Yeah, continue.
But I'm making sure people wash their hands, especially employees of McDonald's.
Yeah, no, that's good. Chris is doing us a favor.
That's right. But anyway, I did feel like an idiot when I saw.
You're a vigilante.
Like, oh, and now every time I walk into North McDonald's, I'm like, there's that sink. Oh,
I remember that sink.
But anyway, shopping carts. The reason why I'm talking about shopping carts is like that's one of the things that I could pretty close get me to. If I see someone just leave their cart, I may yell out my car window and be like, hey. But Riley said something, and here's the thing. I know I'm bringing this up, and to some people this may sound trivial, but Riley made this comment this morning in our men's group where he said, he goes, the reality of it is he's like, when someone just leaves a shopping cart there, that might be how they're showing up in the rest of their life. I mean, think about it. You couldn't walk 15, 20, 30 feet to put a cart away. You'd rather leave your cart to ding somebody's car or block a parking space just to make it about you.
Right.
I mean, if we really break it down, it's like, isn't that kind of selfish?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of like, it's just rude. It's arrogant.
Absolutely.
We could list a bunch of things. And by the way, if you're listening to this or watching this, you're like, oh man, Chris is beating me up about, shopping carts and stuff. And wow, he must be super legalistic. Well, hang with me here a second, because the thing is like, I want you to think, how are you showing up in life? And the thing is if you go to so here's the deal. We've started into this sermon, but I want to start kind of now with the end in mind. And if you fast forward to Matthew 7:28, you don't have to flip there, but basically it says at the conclusion of the message that Jesus' hearers were astonished. They say, your translation might say they were amazed that he taught with such authority. And again, that just kind of like sometimes washes over our head. But really what Jesus is saying is he's speaking to a group of people that they know the 10 Commandments, they know the Torah, they know the law, right? They know the other 613 commands or whatever that are in the Old Testament. And Jesus comes along, when it says that they're astonished, I mean, it's like their heads are blown. I mean, it's just like, what? It's like, this is so crazy to them. That should not get lost on us, that what Jesus has just said in this best sermon ever, what he's doing is blowing their minds.
Right.
And it's blowing their minds that he's talking with such authority.
Right.
He's coming along. It'd be like if some dude just walked into our church next week and was like, yeah, that's what Pastor Mitch says, but let me tell you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the thing is like that really should be where our mind is going. Is in a way, Jesus is kind of upsetting the apple cart here. I mean, he's they're some of them might be thinking he's arrogant. Some of them might be thinking he's, who is this guy? And then you see that kind of through the Gospels, like, who is this guy? Why does he speak with such authority? And there's something about Jesus that he thinks he has the right to come in and say this.
Right.
He has the right to come in and say, you've heard it said this way, but I'm going to tell you this. And here's the thing is I wrote this down. This is crazy. Jesus messes with us. And if you've been following Jesus and he hasn't messed with you,
right,
you might not be following Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? If Jesus hasn't pointed out the shopping carts in your life,
he will.
He will, right? Stick with him long enough. He'll put his finger on something that you're like, you know what I mean? And it makes us uncomfortable. But it's weird because I was flipping through some old notes of mine, and I'm gonna say a quote here. I have no idea if this is original to me, or if I stole this from somebody else. Okay, so full disclosure, I don't know. It was in a weird place. It was in a book that I don't normally journal in or anything. So I really don't know. But the idea comes from this, that This I know is not original to me. The idea that really there are three primary motivators for humans.
Right.
You want to take a guess at what they might be?
Shame, guilt, fear.
Shame, guilt, fear. Okay. I would say those are not, I mean, those certainly can motivate us.
Yeah. Money.
Okay, money. There you go. Yeah, I would say those things are maybe needs or maybe, or responses. Yeah. Yeah, money. Yep.
Food. I don't know. No, I just guess now. I have no idea. Money's the only one I felt confident in.
Money comes right to the top, right? Okay.
Yeah, Western culture.
I'd say not even just Western culture. I think this is universal. Humans, the big three: sex,
right,
money, power. You could argue that maybe money and power could be synonymous. I mean, money represents power.
Right.
I think you can parse it out because some people do things for money, which they acquire power, but there's also people who maybe are in power, what would be esteemed or considered powerless positions, but they're still trying to earn prestige. They're still trying to earn, approval from other people.
Right.
So sex, money, power. You familiar with the apologist J. Warner Wallace, Cold Case Christianity?
I am familiar. I don't know much about him though.
Here's what's interesting. So J. Warner Wallace was a guy who he spent years as a forensic investigator. He was an atheist. He basically took his forensic investigator knowledge and went out and started studying Christianity to try and disprove it. Really, really interesting.
Is this the Case for Christ guy?
No, it's a different guy. That's Lee Strobel. No, this is J. Warner Wallace in Cold Case Christianity. He's got a great ministry today where he goes through and unpacks these things. I was listening to a podcast from him and where he was being interviewed by Frank Turek, and one of the things that J. Warner points out is he was talking about how he says, when you're building cases against criminals, it's really easy for your brain to kind of start making these grand schemes of like, oh, this guy was in league with this guy and he, worked with this guy to do this. And you can start to like really branch out this whole conspiracy, whole thing. He said 9 times out of 10, he says, if you could shortcut the process by just ascribing, sex, money, or power. In other words, this guy did this to be with this girl.
Right.
Like that was the most direct connection. Or this guy cheated this guy to get the money. He didn't even have to be in cahoots with somebody else. He said the crazy thing was, as an investigator, you could build this amazing case. He said, but if you could shortcut the process. He says most time people are motivated by these things, and it doesn't have to be these grand, big.
Right. Not
that conspiracies never happen, but he was just saying you could explain away these things.
That is one thing. I'm a big true crime guy. Right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I always say, that it's 9 out of 10 times is like husband has to do with like husbands or the person like that they're closest with in their relationship.
Yeah. And so the reason why I bring this up is because what Jesus is unpacking here deals with the big three.
There you go.
This sermon deals with the big three. Yeah. And why wouldn't the best sermon ever unpack, our motivations for sex, money, and power?
Right.
Right. And so Jesus is gonna mess with us. He's gonna mess with us. Okay. Now here's the thing: this is the statement that I wrote. I put this, and again, I don't know if I came up with this or somebody else. Doesn't matter. I like the statement regardless. It says this. It says, if the truth, now here's the key, truth. Right. If the truth about who we are and what we do takes us farther from these motivators, the basic human tendency will be to avoid truth.
Yeah.
So in other words, we need to understand that what motivates all of us on some level with the big three, if truth comes into our lives and truth makes us step away from those things, then the natural tendency for human beings will be to avoid truth.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I think that is why Jesus was always messing with people. Right. Because he was coming along, putting his finger on something in their life, in our lives, that's pointing out the truth. But yet, when we're motivated by these three factors and it's messing with that, then our natural tendency will be to avoid the truth. People say all the time, the truth will set you free. Mm-hmm. The Bible does say that, but that's kind of slightly out of context.
Right.
Because Jesus says, if you abide in me and remain in me, it's at that point you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So really the truth makes us uncomfortable.
Right.
And so if you read the Sermon on the Mount it's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to make you uncomfortable, okay? And that doesn't mean we have to be legalistic about this. It doesn't mean, but it just means we have to be honest with ourselves. So let's kind of go there. Let's go to Matthew 5:13. So we went through that progression of blessed are the poor in spirit and the meek and all of that. And so that's kind of our setup. And it says here in verse 13, it says, he's speaking to a crowd here.
Right.
Who? I mean, what people group is he speaking to?
I
mean, who's his fellow countrymen? What are they?
Jewish men.
Jewish people, right? Okay. So he's speaking to them. These are the elect. These are the ones who God has called. This is the nation that God has said, through you, I'm going to bless the earth. Okay. So he's speaking on a hillside. It's cool. In Israel, I've been to the region that they think he gave the sermon, right there on the Galilee. And there's a church there that kind of commemorates this whole thing. And so if you've never been to Israel, you got to go. It's just crazy. So I can see it in my mind right there. So here's Jesus delivering this. He's talking to people in this region of Israel. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand. And it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So let's just unpack this for a second, all right? Let's talk about salt.
I was just say I hate salt. I'm just gonna put that out right now. Especially my parents used to get those pink rock Himalayan salt.
Oh yeah.
They're raving about that. I don't like salt. And so, I mean, is salt very valuable at this time frame?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've seen reports, or I've seen things where some people say in certain parts of the world, salt could have been maybe worth more than gold, just because well, number one, it was a preservative. You don't have refrigeration back then. So to preserve meats and to keep things lasting longer, you just douse things in salt, So yeah, I mean, and salt was also a fertilizer as well.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so salt would act as a fertilizer. Now, I am not a entomologist, horticulturalist, whatever. I'm not someone who understands plant stuff and all that. I've had a garden a handful of times. That's about as far as I go. But I also understand that salt was something that I don't remember if it was the Babylonians or the Persians, but they kind of had this scorched earth policy, and they would actually come in and actually salt fields so nothing could grow. So there's a way in which salt could actually really be damaging, and that was the way they would kind of decimate kingdoms. But salt within, in fact, in another spot, Jesus talks about being salt, and he says if you lose your saltiness, you're not even good enough for the manure pile, which means they would add salt to manure to enhance its fertilizing properties,
right?
Which is really interesting, because if you look at that, Jesus is basically saying that if you lose your saltiness, you could ruin poop.
Yeah, pretty much.
Talk about a shopping cart. Jesus is really messing with us there,
Yeah.
But that's not what he's saying right here. But he is talking about this. And here's the thing that strikes me. He says, so he's speaking to this people group, you are the salt of the earth. So he's talking about, you have this value. You have this preserving quality. You have this, you are this fertilizer. You are this thing that enhances flavor and life and living. And in a sense, there's a way in which I almost sense that Jesus is basically saying, don't call for the Calvary. You are the Calvary.
Right.
You are the forces. You are, listen, I'm here to show you the way, but let me tell you, this is on you. You bear this responsibility.
Right.
And if we understand light, multiple times in the Old Testament, and here's the thing, is there's this motif of the mission of God and what God is doing and how he wants to draw people. And over and over and over, he talks about Israel being established as a light.
Right.
As a place that he's going to shine through. Now, the application for us today is for me to recognize that I'm salt. I'm light.
Right.
But I also have a part to play. If I've lost my saltiness, which again, we should still be kind of seeing this as a setup, and we're not going to be able to get on into everything, but how do we lose our saltiness? What do you think? How do we lose our light?
Yeah. I wouldn't say works.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we all fall short.
Yeah.
I'd say more of just following Jesus. I mean,
yeah.
You know, have you surrendered your heart to him?
Right.
Is what I would say, where that line begins to be drawn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and again, if we appeal back to the Beatitudes, we're seeing this is how salt and light shows up.
Right.
You know, poor in spirit, meek, you know, this humility, peacemaker, you know, all of these things, like that's what salt and light should look like.
Right.
You know, but just as a way of, because we're going to have to wrap this up here, but just as a way of showing where we're going, again, we're still kind of setting this up, and it's important that we understand Jesus is about to mess with us.
Right.
So let me tell you, he's saying you are salt and light. We can't get lost. This is something that's valuable. It's something that's worth a lot, and it's something that matters. So Jesus is saying that's who you are.
Right. And it's interesting that when it says light, not only are you light, but you're a city set on a hill that cannot be hidden.
Yeah.
It's interesting that literally it says cannot be hidden. So it's kind of a foreshadow of like, if you're following me and you surrender your heart, are you hidden?
Yeah. And I love this when it says in the same way, you know, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So think about the big three,
right?
Sex, money, power. We all have cravings, longings. We crave for those things. And usually those things are about us. They're turning those things inside on us. The proper use of those things is for others.
Right. So it's not necessarily a bad big three. It's more of what are you?
Yeah. What's the ultimate? Exactly. Because we could take each one of those. Okay. You know, sex. Well, we know that God intended sex for marriage, but it is for one another. It's not even in my marriage. Like it's not about a self-fulfilling thing. Right. It's about a giving. It's about an act of I'm giving this to my spouse, and that's how husbands and wives should see that. But just look at the culture at large, and what do? We turn that around where we actually manipulate and seek to self-gratify.
Right.
And I mean, and there's so much ugliness in the world around the arena of sexuality because it's mostly selfish. Money, same thing. Money makes the world go round. I mean, money, there's a basic economy in the world. We need money, right?
Right.
But what are we doing? What are we using money for?
Right.
Is it for ourselves or for the power? The same thing. And we could spend a lot of time here, but just if you doubt where this is going, I'm just going to read the headings. All right. Jesus is about ready to talk about anger, lust, divorce. I mean, these are just oaths, retaliation, loving your enemies, giving to the needy. Then he goes into the Lord's Prayer, fasting, laying up treasures in heaven, and not being anxious, judging others.
Yeah, some buttons are about to be pushed.
So again, hey, we're going somewhere with this. We're going somewhere with this. So again, keeping in mind, I know this is kind of just like, again, another long setup, but this is what we want to keep these things in mind, these big three, because we're going to keep referencing back to these things. So you excited about this?
Absolutely. I love sermons, and the greatest one ever.
Greatest one ever. Yeah. That could probably produce many sermons and has produced many other sermons.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus puts it all in one, you know,
we could make about 50 out of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, that's all we got this week. We're going to land this thing right there.
30 minutes.
Yeah, went by super fast. So hopefully it went by fast for you watching or listening as well. So, and I don't know. Let us know. Do we need to bring more theology, more dad jokes? Let us know. Whether that's in the comments here or you want to email us, you can do that through the Kearney Grace website as well. Yeah. So, all right.
Subscribe, share.
That's right. Smash that like button. Stuff. Whatever. Yeah. All right.